You know, Alex, I spent 3 hours yesterday looking for my 3/4 inch bevel edge chisel. 3 hours.
Oh, here we go. Let me guess, it was in the last place you looked?
It was under a pile of offcuts, resting on top of the miter saw station, which is, as of yesterday, exactly 42 feet away from my workbench. Ask me how I know that.
I'm guessing you paced it out in a fit of rage?
I did, and by the time I walked back to the bench, I forgot what I was even supposed to be paring down. That's the small shop tax, my friend. If you don't lay the place out right, you spend half your life just migrating, like a very frustrated, sawdust covered swallow.
Well, today's the day we stop the migration. Welcome back to the Tiger Den podcast. I'm Alex, and with me is Tiger, a man who currently has more miles on his shop boots than his truck. Today we're doing a deep dive into small shop layout. Because Tiger, most of our listeners aren't working in a 5,000 square foot industrial complex. They're in one-car garages, basements, and, heaven help them, sheds.
Here's the thing nobody tells you, Alex. A small shop can actually be more efficient than a big one, but only if you're ruthless. When I moved from my big barn into this garage space, I thought I was losing my mind. I had to get creative. If you just wing it, you end up with what I call the shop Tetris nightmare, where you have to move 3 machines just to turn on the lathe.
Okay, so let's get into the ruthless part. Where do we actually start? If I'm standing in an empty 12 by 20 garage, what's the first thing I'm thinking about?
Workflow. Always workflow. Imagine the life of a board. It's like a journey. It enters the shop as a dirty, oversized, rough-sawn beast, and it needs to exit as a polished, elegant table leg.
Wait, hold on. You're getting poetic again. Break it down for the mere mortals.
Fine. Point A to point B. Rule number 1. Store your wood near the entrance. I see guys putting their lumber rack at the very back of the shop. Ask me how I know that's a mistake.
Because you dropped a sheet of 3/4 inch MDF on your toe halfway across the room?
Precisely. You don't want to be maneuvering an 8-foot oak board through a gauntlet of power tools like an American gladiator. Put the lumber rack near the door, back the truck up, slide it in, done.
That makes sense for the heavy lifting. But once the wood is inside, where does it go?
It goes to the milling triad. This is your jointer, your planer, and your table saw. These three are the holy trinity of prep. You're going to be bouncing between them constantly. If they're on opposite sides of the room, you're just doing cardio. You want them grouped.
But in a small shop, those are the biggest floor hogs. How do you group them without creating a dead zone in the middle of the room?
You play with heights and outfeeds. For example, my planer sits on a stand that's exactly 1 inch lower than my table saw. Why? Because then the table saw becomes its outfeed table. You're making one surface do two jobs.
Okay, but what about the miter saw? Everyone has that massive miter saw station taking up a whole wall.
Strip it down. My miter saw lives right next to the lumber rack. Why? Because the miter saw is for breaking down. You take the longboard, you cut it into manageable chunks, then you go to the table saw. It shouldn't be in the middle of the room. It's a border patrol tool.
I saw a tip from Rick Campbell in Fine Woodworking about clearing the floor. He literally got rid of his freestanding router table and built it into the wing of his table saw. That feels like a pro move.
It's the ultimate space saver. I did that 3 years ago. It's brilliant until you're halfway through a complex cabinet build, you have your table saw fence perfectly dialed in for a critical cut, and then you realize you need to route a groove.
And
And then you cry, because you have to move the fence, lose your setting, and ruin your life. But honestly, for a small shop, it's worth the headache. Just get a lift like the Jessam he mentions, something you can crank down so the bit disappears. It turns your saw into a massive assembly table.
speaking of assembly, you're a big fan of putting the assembly table in the middle of the room, right?
It's the kitchen island of the workshop. Everything happens there. You assemble, you glue, you drink your coffee, you stare at your mistakes and wonder why you didn't become an accountant. It needs to be central because you're coming at it from all angles.
But Steve Ramsey, woodworking for mere mortals, he's all about the mobile lifestyle, everything on wheels. Is that a Tiger-approved strategy, or are you too old school for casters?
Listen, I love a good heavy stationary bench as much as the next guy who wants to throw his back out pushing it. But in a small shop, if it doesn't have wheels, it's an obstacle. Mobile bases are the only reason I can still fit a car in my garage when the wife gets that look on her face.
Okay, let's talk about the thing everyone ignores until it's too late. Natural light. You mentioned putting the bench near a window?
Here's the thing nobody tells you. Artificial light lies to you. It makes your surfaces look flat. You'll be sanding away, thinking you've got a piece of glass, and then you take it out into the sun, and it looks like a topographical map of the Swiss Alps. Put your workbench near a window. Not just for the view, though seeing the mailman go by is the highlight of my Tuesday, but for the raking light. It shows you every scratch, every tool mark, every bit of glue you missed.
And what about finishing? You're not suggesting we spray lacquer next to an open window in a dusty shop, are you?
God, no. Finishing is the one thing that should happen near a window for the ventilation, but far from the sanding station. In a small shop, that's tough. My finishing room is just a plastic curtain I pull across a corner. It's high-tech, Alex. Very NASA.
I've seen your NASA setup. It's a shower curtain from the dollar store and a box fan with a furnace filter taped to it.
Hey, it works, and it cost me $12. That's $12 more I can spend on clamps.
Clamps. Let's talk about those. They're like gremlins. You buy two, and suddenly there are 40, and they're all tangled up in a corner.
Store them near the assembly table. I don't care if you have a wall rack or a rolling cart, just keep them within arm's reach of the glue up. There is nothing, and I mean nothing, more stressful than realizing your glue is starting to skin over and your parallel clamps are on the other side of a table saw.
I feel like we're missing a big one. Dust collection. In a small shop, a massive cyclone system with 6-inch ducting everywhere looks like an octopus is trying to eat your ceiling.
It's a space killer. For the small shop, I'm a huge advocate for the short-run strategy. Instead of ducting the whole room, put your dust collector on wheels. Move it to the tool you're using. Or, even better, build a dust collection cart like MWA Woodworks does. It keeps the vacuum and the cyclone together in one small footprint.
What about the hidden spaces? I've seen people using the space under their wing extension saw for drawers, or even putting their air compressor on a shelf near the ceiling.
Overhead is the final frontier. If you aren't using your ceiling, you're wasting half your shop. Clamps, scrap wood, air lines, get them up. Just don't put anything heavy over the table saw. Ask me how I know that.
Did a piece of 4x4 fall on your saw mid-cut?
It hit the outfeed table, bounced, and landed in my coffee. Ruined a perfectly good Italian roast. And the saw blade, but mostly the coffee.
So, if you had to boil all this down for someone who's feeling overwhelmed, someone sitting in a garage full of boxes and a new table saw they're afraid to unbox, what's the takeaway?
The takeaway is that your shop layout isn't a destination. It's a living thing. I've been woodworking for 30 years, and I still move my bandsaw 6 inches to the left every 6 months because I find a tweak.
So don't aim for perfection on day one.
Exactly. Start with the milling triad. Get the wood in the door, get it flat, get it square. The rest will tell you where it wants to be. If you find yourself walking across the shop 10 times a day to get a screwdriver, move the screwdrivers. It's that simple. A shop is just a tool, Alex. And like any tool, it's only as good as the person who knows how to use it and where they put it.
Well, I think I'm going to go home and move my miter saw. It's currently acting as a very expensive shelf for my garden hose.
We've all been there. Just make sure the garden hose isn't plugged in when you start cutting. Ask me how I know.
No, Tiger. I think I can guess that one. Thanks for joining us in the den. Now go move something.
And keep your fingers away from the spinny bits. See ya.